Good morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the theme of today's episode is awesome people in awesome movies. Yes, three actors that are beloved, or at least arguably beloved by fans, are circling some definitely beloved properties. And we're going to start out with the most beloved of all, at least when it comes to actors right now, and that's Idris Elba, who has been very patient, immensely patient. He's opened the door for Thor and Company in Asgard. Spill.com's joke about that, about him being the doorman of Asgard, was one of the funniest jokes I've ever seen about how different ethnicities are depicted in films. And as soon as I saw it, I heard that, I was like, oh, I see it now, and I can't unsee it. So he's been stuck in the Marvel Universe as Asgard's doorman, and he, has been mentioned many times by fans for the role of James Bond, but, it's been, I think, a pretty difficult discussion, and Idris Elba has had to take some hits with people being like, Bond can't be black, even though Idris Elba is actually from the UK, and then, is he too old, etc., etc. And so he's been a good sport about the whole thing, and it looks like his patience has finally been rewarded as he is in talks to join a property that would be unique. It would be, some race bending going on, but I think that it's just such a fantastic idea that it's pretty exciting. All right, enough teasing, right? Let me just tell you what it is. Or as you can see, of course, from the pictures for today's stories. But Idris Elba is in talks to be the hero in Stephen King's The Dark Tower. This is an absolutely fabulous idea, and it would pit him against Matthew McConaughey, who is circling the villain role. So it would be Idris Elba versus Matthew McConaughey in a supernatural Western. Wow, that sounds amazing. I think that would be so good. I mean, I was not interested in The Dark Tower at all until this casting came about, and I think this is a good example of how casting and actors sometimes do elevate a project or interest people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in it. I mean, who's to say I wouldn't have been interested once I saw images or a trailer, but just, the idea of a Dark Tower movie, I wasn't that keen on. But an Idris Elba versus Matthew McConaughey, supernatural Western, I definitely want to see that. And Idris Elba is an excellent person to join this cast, and the Dark Tower is starting to look a little bit like a pedigree film, because Matthew McConaughey, of course, has his awards for Dallas Buyers Club, the work he did on True Detective. I think still pretty highly regarded in terms of his ability. I think he's shown a little bit of a sameness that we're all aware of now, and I think that took a little bit of the shine off of it, but still, I think he's very good at what he does. He's a little like Wolverine that way. He's the best there is at what he does, and that's talking real slow in a drawl and looking like he's thinking a whole lot before he speaks and while he speaks. But then Idris Elba, of course, is a double SAG nominee and a double Golden Globe nominee, and at this rate probably an Oscar nominee for Best Supporting for Beasts of No Nation. So he's nominated for Best Supporting for Beasts in both SAG and Golden Globes as well, and then he also has nominations for his work on the Luther miniseries on the BBC. So that's very exciting, and I just think that Idris Elba, I think it's nice to see some justice, and I think this is something that everybody should be happy about. I'd be curious for Dark Tower fans, what do you think of doing some race bending with that lead character? I'm cool with it, but I don't read The Dark Tower. So I'm curious to what you think of it. And also, I guess at the end of the day, it's nice that Idris Elba was able to get an original property, a character he can make his own, and I just think that's very, very exciting. Idris Elba, so many times I'm talking to people and they're like, who's Idris Elba? I think he definitely has his fan base, but he really needs something to elevate him to the mainstream consciousness. It might be Star Trek Beyond. He's, of course, the villain there. We'll see how much makeup he's under. But he's a little bit like Benedict Cumberbatch, who also was a Star Trek villain. But I think that both of them have their cult fan bases thanks to British TV, and they still, though, haven't really quite won over mainstream movie-going audiences. All right, so speaking of race bending, we're going to actually talk about the next story of the day is Will Smith's Deadshot, and there is a rumor circulating that he will be in the new Batman movie, the solo Batman movie, whenever that takes place. Ben Affleck, maybe tipped to direct as well, and Geoff Johns is supposed to be hashing out a script with him. That's something that's been discussed. That has a little bit more legitimacy as a rumor, but this is such an interesting idea, I thought we should discuss it. Now, Will Smith, as is every actor who signs on to these comic book universes is signed on for multiple films. So he will be back. Deadshot will return. Just like they always say at the end of the Marvel movies, the Avengers will return. So Will Smith will return as Deadshot, although I guess now we know he's not going to die in Suicide Squad, although whoever thought Will Smith would die in Suicide Squad, not going to happen. I made a video about everybody who would die in Suicide Squad and the likelihood, and Will Smith, of course, was not very likely to die. I'll put a link to that at the end of this episode. But anyway, Will Smith, I think that him and Ben Affleck teaming up in a movie is very interesting. I'm curious, though, how Batman and Deadshot would end up working together and how much of the Suicide Squad is going to end up in a Batman movie because they've borrowed so heavily from the Batman Rogues Gallery for that film. Deadshot, though, of course, well, interestingly enough, if you watch I'll put a link to this as well, if you watch my Origin of Deadshot video, he actually started out with Batman, and he was like a gentleman vigilante. And so Batman realized he was a crook, got up to no good, and had to expose him. So it's interesting, he's really, ever since then, he has moved far and far away from the Batman stories, really taking on his own universe in the Suicide Squad. That's been his title since the Suicide Squad actually started. It's actually quite interesting. But anyway, so I think that there's like an organic quality, I guess, to bringing him back, but only from like a cerebral sense, being like, oh, I see how you tied it in there, pretty good. I don't think fans are like, oh, I can't wait to see Deadshot and Batman team up again. I think most readers would be like, what the what? I don't believe that's ever happened, and I'm not particularly interested in it. I am interested, though, more in a Will Smith-Ben Affleck team up. That, to me, is very interesting, and I wonder how they would be working together. I've always enjoyed the Batman stories where he's forced to work with one of his rogues galleries. They're tricky to do. That's why they don't do them very often, but when they do them, there's actually one right now, Batman Europa, where Batman and the Joker are working together. It's off to a pretty good start. But I'm interested in this. I'd be curious, though, if Ben Affleck just heads over to a Suicide Squad movie, I don't really know if anybody would complain, though. I think that Batman, of course, is the coolest, and we'll just follow him wherever he goes. I'm very curious about Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne and Batman. It looks really good to me. So what do you think of this? Would you like the idea of Will Smith showing up in a Batman movie? I think that sounds like potent stuff, Will Smith and Ben Affleck together. But we'll see how Deadshot is handled in Suicide Squad first, I guess, before we can be truly excited about that. And also, will it be hinted about at all when Batman shows up in Suicide Squad? Will Deadshot help him out a little bit, do him a major solid? All right, so the third story of the day is actually something that we've talked about before, so we're ahead of the curve over here on Morning Movie News, and that's the idea that Cate Blanchett is going to be in Thor Ragnarok. Now, that's been a rumor for a while now, and it turns out to be true, because that's why we discussed it, and now she's officially in talks and close to signing for a big showy role, a showstopper role in Thor Ragnarok. Now, a lot of people's initial reaction was, oh, Enchantress. I don't think so. Maybe she could be Enchantress. If she is Enchantress, it would be interesting to take that character and make her older. Enchantress is usually Thor's age and is sometimes a potential love interest. Sometimes an outright love interest, deciding if, Thor's like, you know what, she's too attractive, I can't hold it against her, and whatever. I've had a lot of mead. Only Thor gets into these. Although, actually, in the recent Iron Man comic, that he has a romantic past with Whitney Frost, a.k.a. Madam Mask, and I find that very interesting as well. And a little out of character for Iron Man. But anyway, not Thor. But, maybe Enchantress is a cougar. I don't know. So you could always go with that, or Mrs. Robinson kind of situation. So they could maybe still go with it. That would be interesting. I think Chris Hemsworth would be game. He seems like a pretty awesome guy who's really, up for anything as long as, it's a good idea. So she could be Enchantress, but I think as everybody, and as we guessed before, I think most likely she's going to be Hela, mistress of Hell, the Asgardian version of Hell, or the dead, basically. It's like our Asgardian Hades. And that's a pretty cool role, and I think Cate Blanchett would do an amazing job in it. And for instance, when I saw Cinderella, the recent live adaptation from Disney, she was amazing. She did a fantastic job, and she wore amazing clothes, really over-the-top costumes, quite well. So I would love to see Cate Blanchett in it, although some people are saying, oh, it's like Glenn Close in Guardians of the Galaxy, Robert Redford in Winter Soldier, perhaps William Hurt in the upcoming Civil War. I would hope that Cate Blanchett would have more of a legitimate role. I don't want one of these prestige drive-bys where they wave at the audience and go, I want to be here too. It's okay now for us to do these types of movies, and look at this lovely check I'm taking home. No, I would like her to genuinely be a part of the Thor movie. I think Thor could use it, and also she's a good actress. She's not above this kind of content, as you can see from Cinderella, and I think she'd be excellent. I think Hela is almost like Maleficent. So Kate Blanchett will get a chance to play that character as well, right down to the headgear. So I think that would be fun. All right, so we have another BTT video question today. I'm going to get to written questions next week, and I was going to do it today actually, but Preston Young, BTT regular viewer Preston Young, submitted such a great video. He had so much enthusiasm, not just for his question, but also for video viewer questions that I felt we just had to. I couldn't wait on Preston. All right, so Preston, ask away.
Good morning, Grace. I hope you're doing well today. I love this video submission question idea. Really nice. So I've got a question for you, and I figured you'd be able to answer it since your channel's called Beyond the Trailer, right? Basically, why are movie trailers called movie trailers? I heard someone posit the idea that perhaps movie previews used to actually play after movies, which, when you think about how the movies used to be like an all-day affair and double features and all that, I guess it really makes sense because then it would literally trail the movie. But big question, why are they called movie trailers? Could you answer that for us, please? I'm Preston L. Young from Montgomery, Alabama, and no, I did not forget your smiley faces. So have a great day, Grace, and love the show. Watch every day. Bye.
Great question, Preston. You really stumped me there a little bit, but it's a short answer to your question, but it leads to a bigger, overall discussion that I'd like to have with everyone today. And you've given me a good excuse to introduce it. But before I do that, I would just like to point out to you, if you didn't realize it, you might be like, Preston looks familiar to me. Well, Preston, thank you for this. It was such a great gift when you originally sent it in. But if you watch the wish list episode, BTT viewers submitting what they hope for an upcoming film for Beauty and the Beast, Preston not only wrote a song, with the Beauty and the Beast lyrics, but his own, to say what he wanted to see in the movie, but he sung it. And he did such a good job. It brought a smile to my face. It opens the video after my introduction. And so, Preston, it's so nice to see you again. So I also put a link to that at the end of the video if you'd like to check out Preston's work, which was quite good, especially for someone as tone deaf as me. I was really impressed. All right, so Preston, yes, the short answer to your question is that trailers used to play at the end of a movie. In the old days, they used to put a newsreel in front of a movie, a cartoon, and then apparently at the end, they'd run some trailers. And so there was like previews and trailers. However, nobody watched the trailers. Everybody would get up and leave because apparently trailers weren't as exciting as end credit scenes because everybody sticks around for those. And also I think fandom just wasn't quite the same back then. So people didn't stick around for trailers. Although actually, so this is the larger discussion. I actually wouldn't mind if they played trailers at the end of the movie. Although that's not really fair to the people who work at the theater who have to clean it and do a quick turnover for the next crowd. So anyway, since nobody stuck around, they put them in the beginning of the movie. It's a little bit like the opposite of credits. Like they used to run all the extended credits at the beginning of the movie to make sure you watch them. But if you're ever watching an old movie, it's a pet peeve because your dinner is sitting there and you're like, I'm eating during the entire credit sequence, just get to the movie, but you don't want to be disrespectful and fast forward it, and you feel it kind of sets the tone. It's frustrating. But anyway, that's the answer. Yes, they ran after, but they kept the name. But you'll notice that they call them previews in the thing on the front from the MPAA about what it's rated. So interesting, they tried to, I guess, rebrand them as previews, but it didn't quite work. But the larger discussion that I want to have is how do you guys feel about how many trailers they play in front of movies these days? I have mixed feelings. I think that for some people, it's nice to be able to see. Some people don't watch trailers online, so they're like, this is the only way that I'm going to see it. Also, sometimes it's nice to see trailers on the big screen. For instance, The Jungle Book looks much better in IMAX 3D than it did on a regular screen or on a computer screen. So that was a pleasant surprise. But for the most part, they play so many trailers these days, like 20 minutes of trailers, sometimes even 30 minutes. And most of the time now, it's trailers we've already seen because we watch them online. I don't know trailers get a lot of views. I don't know how much it is from repeat viewing, but you would imagine that most people going to the movies have seen the trailers. I actually would prefer for them to play them in the lobby, in the theater, right outside, like when you're getting your food or when you're waiting for the theater to be turned over to get in. I would much prefer trailers to be playing on TV screens there. And then you can stop and watch it if you want, or you can just go about your business because you've already seen it. Because I just think, it's frustrating. I think your food gets cold or you've eaten your food by the time the movie starts. And I have to say with press screenings, they don't show trailers and it's much more enjoyable just to get right into the movie. So I'm curious to how you guys feel about this. Do you feel that trailers, the situation has evolved thanks to the internet, that we don't need to play so many in front of a movie? Or Or do you like it that way and you'd like to keep it that way? All right, thank you for your question, Preston. Again, so nice to see you and hear from you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, your thoughts on trailers and when and where they should play. And then, of course, let me know what you'd like to see covered on Monday and any questions that you might have, written or video. Thanks for watching. Bye.